It's time for the View in Your Mirror podcast. I'm Katie Harms, and along with Lisa Rubin, we help you check in and curate the best possible you and the best view in your mirror. We share tips, tricks, and strategies from our 35 plus years in our respective industries. We talk about your day from morning to night and everything in between. We share our uniqueness, relish in our shared experiences. Along the way, we share conversation with fabulous people who give us their own thought-provoking insights. So come along as we help you hone the best view in your mirror. Lisa Rubin.
Katie Harms, we had some technical difficulties today.
We did. And that means what?
That means that we are actually recording this together next to each other, looking at the same screen, which we've never done before.
No, not since we started and had guests in the office.
Yeah, but we were still on separate screens. Oh, no, you're right. You're right. We were on, but you had a nice little studio set up in your house.
Yeah, we had all the stuff then. We had our
we were
microphones and we looked
fancy. Really fancy and famous.
Real official. Now we're zooming it.
Zooming it.
You know, we moved again.
I know. Every 2 years, Katie. Every 2 years you move. Like that would make me crazy. It makes me crazy when you just tell me about it.
Well, some of the things I thought might be great to talk about is some of the things I did in this house that people might want to consider that they're not thinking about.
I think that's a really good idea.
When they're doing remodels or builds.
Because I came over and saw what you were doing, and you are exceptional at space.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We had to create a mudroom. The garage came right into a room that had no space. The closet was kind of across the room, whatnot. But I think mudrooms are critically important, that people don't spend enough time thinking about where is their stuff going to go. I think collectively in a house, it still is mind-boggling to me that people go through the process of working with an architect, working with designers on color schemes and all that, but still don't know where their stuff's going to go when they get into their house.
And that's why you're in business.
And that's why I'm in business. So recently working with a client who had plans laid out, and we switched them. We did a lot to change those up. And thankfully, they were very open to the idea of the thoughts that I brought to them. Things like a door into a new half bath going, basically sitting right at the head of the bed. So if you think about that, it's the middle of the night. I don't know about you, but I've reached the age where I'm up 1 or 2 times.
And it's so annoying.
So how do you make sure you have to walk through that space in your head? Where are things going to go and where am I going to go? And how does that space function? And are there ways to do it differently? So we got there. We got there with a lot of things. There was a lot of doors. So we talked about pocket doors. We talked about no door into the shower. A big new thing that's going on now is panels in the shower. Unless you're doing a steam shower, which some people still like and want, you don't necessarily need a door into your shower.
We don't have one.
Right? And how about the controls to where you turn the shower on? Do you have to reach into the shower to turn the shower on, or are the controls to turn that shower on the opposite wall of where the water comes down?
That's exactly how our shower is. That's amazing.
Right?
I can go turn the shower on without getting wet.
Correct. A lot of people don't think about that. It's one of the things that people don't think about. Now let's talk about your kitchens. If you're building or remodeling, before you say yes to any cabinet design, you should place everything you own or have or want to have in that kitchen in drawers, in cabinets, in pullouts, every single thing to make sure it actually works for you.
And how would people do that, Katie? Because
most
people, that's overwhelming to some people.
It's not overwhelming. It's time consuming. If it's overwhelming to people, it's because they don't want to take the time to do it, or it feels like it takes time, but it's really not an overwhelming process. You're living in a kitchen now. You know what you have in that kitchen. and you start looking at the cabinet plan, because no one is going to build or remodel without having a plan that shows cabinets, right?
Yep.
And in a lot of cases, whoever's doing the cabinet design is placing cabinets because that's the way most people do it. Well, okay, that's a place to start. Now, do you have a pantry or don't you have a pantry? Is your pantry a walk-in pantry or is it a wall pantry? What's going to go in there? How is it going to flow when you come in that room? How is it going to flow when you're cooking? Where do you want your knives? Where do you want your cutting boards? Where do you want all of these things? Do you want to have clean spaces? So then everything needs a space. And on that plan that you've gotten from the builder or the cabinet designer, you start literally writing in what's going to go into each and every drawer, what's behind the doors, making sure you have pullouts behind doors. Otherwise, do deep drawers. Do you want, just got done doing this with our daughter. They're doing a remodel. They would like their kids to be able to pull the bowls out and use them. And they're still fairly young, but they can help set the table. They can put things back after. So dishes are now going in a drawer in the lower half. So there'll be the peg system for dishes that will fit in there. If you don't know what the peg system is, that's an easy Google. It really is pegs that hold the bowls and the plates in place. So when you're opening that drawer, they don't slide all over the place. So realistically, everything that you own should be placed in your home before that home is even built. If you have furniture that you're bringing with you, it's one thing to look at a space on a blueprint and say, gee, that looks like a big open space. But where the doors are coming into that room makes a difference in the furniture placement. And so you need to really take a look at how your furniture is going to fit in that space. Again, take the layout, take the blueprint. If you have to cut out little pieces of furniture that are sized correctly to that blueprint and place them in your space, do that to make sure that what you're bringing with you will fit.
Makes complete sense. And, thinking about the house we're in now that we built actually already 10, 11 years ago. But the one thing that I was really obsessed with was the laundry room.
Mm-hmm.
And you build laundry rooms, but they don't think about how you use your laundry room.
Correct.
And I wanted a pole because I hang most of my stuff. I wanted a counter that I could fold or wrap presents. And then at the time we had our doggy, so the crate went underneath. Now I have this empty space there that I can use for other things.
Right. The one thing people don't think about in a laundry room, especially with families, is where do the laundry baskets go when I've got a full basket of laundry because I've had my kids bring down their laundry and it's laundry day or whatnot. But a lot of times that laundry room is right off the mudroom. And now you've got baskets sitting around. So you have to create a space for laundry baskets.
Exactly.
And a lot of times that can be underneath that counter.
Right.
A lot of times under a counter, you'll see a cabinet. Why? They're usually just a place to store crap that you don't use all that often. So use that area for your laundry baskets. And I'm a big fan of regular laundry baskets, whether they're cloth and pretty or whatnot, being switched out from the rooms. It's not a huge expense, but it's a beautiful way to do it. And it took me the longest time to get my builders to say, don't put a cabinet underneath that counter. Do open shelves to slide a laundry basket in.
Right.
It just makes sense.
Yeah.
The other thing, and the last thing I'll talk about this time, is in a mudroom area, in an entry area, really think about how many shoes and boots you're going to have in that area. If you're a household where you don't wear your shoes and boots through the house, or if you're in Minnesota or one of the climates in the winter where you're not going to wear your shoes and boots through the house, where are they going to live? You need to look at vertical storage and have enough of it. And the other thing you need to have enough of is a pole for hanging. I still, to this day in Minnesota, see new homes being built with no actual closet space and just hooks. And I'm thinking, where in the world do these things go?
I know. And you created our mudroom space. And it works great.
And we did okay.
It's perfect.
11 years later, it's still working,
perfect.
right?
It's perfect.
Right. And you can be in a smaller blueprint, right? If you're empty nesters and whatnot, you can be in a smaller blueprint. It's how you use those spaces. That's
but even if you're empty nester, you still have stuff.
right. But you don't have your kids' stuff until the grandkids start.
No, until the grandkids start coming. If you're going to have grandchildren, like, I think about that all the time because I'm not a person that I like stuff out.
Right.
And I have all the toys in the corner. And I'm like, I don't know how long I'm going to want to look at the toys.
Right. Right. So then you make adjustments for those.
Yeah. Right.
Listen, we have talk about adjustments, healthcare, and how we look at healthcare, especially as women, need some adjusting.
That's for sure.
To just the person. We have Katie Severt with us. Very interesting. She is doing quarterly Let's Talk Women events, really focused on women's needs. Very interesting. I think you'll enjoy her. Let's welcome Katie to the show. Lisa, together, we are excited to welcome Katie Severt, who is a healthcare advocate. She's advancing access to underserved communities of children and women. She is the founder of Let's Talk Health, Let's Talk Women, which is a quarterly panel series at the Minneapolis Club. And she builds events, corporate engagement opportunities. Really, we're here to talk about the disparities in healthcare beyond the doctor's office, research and funding. More than that, we're here to learn about Katie. So Katie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you and glad we twisted your arm. You are a busy woman, so to get a little bit of time with you is exceptional. When you're talking to people, when you first meet them, and I had that opportunity not too long ago, how do you explain what you do?
That's the funny thing about women is people are always trying to put us in boxes. Like, what do you do, right? So sometimes I just say I do a lot of things. Right now I'm focused on women's health disparities and really elevating people that are doing great work.
Well, that's true. And you're putting that all together. So then maybe let's take the question and go back. What's your background? Because as we talked and what we found, we had a very diverse conversation that went all over the board and found a lot of commonalities like women like to do when they, I think like everyone likes to do when they speak, right? But getting to the heart of the matter, what brought you to this point? Give us the Reader's Digest condensed version of where you've been in the past, however long.
Wow. Yeah. Well, my background's actually in technology. I started my career selling computers and hardware and software, consulting services. It was very much a male-dominated business back then. And I was very comfortable in that world. And then I had babies and everything changed because as a mother, everything just changes. And I have 4 children and I stayed at home with them for 10 years or so, and the PTAs and the mommy groups and all of the clubs was like a whole new world to me. And then when the global pandemic hit and COVID and all of the disparities for health for women were kind of revealed through, being on the front of our feed every morning, when that started to dissipate, I really decided to do something about it because it made me crazy. We took the brunt of the pandemic. 4 women are in frontline work. We are caregivers and advisors, and the pandemic just kind of changed my viewpoint. And I decided instead of going back into the startup world that I was going to start my own thing. And so here I am.
Well, so still the startup world, only advocating for what you truly believe in and finding kind of combining those passions. And you're in a medical family as well, right?
That's correct. My husband's a physician. Both my brother is a PhD in neuroscience, and so is my sister-in-law. I'm connected to some boards through some philanthropic work I did at the University of Minnesota in the Adoption Medicine Clinic. We adopted our daughter from Korea, and I made a lot of great contacts there. So I just have exposure to a lot of healthcare professionals, and I knew that I could ask them to come in and explain this stuff to all of us that were really brought to the front pages during the pandemic.
Do people ever say no to you?
No, That's the craziest thing. I just try to think of like the smartest, most amazing woman that I could think of, whatever the topic might be, whether it's heart health or integrative healing, and I call them up and they say yes. It's been incredible. And one of the most incredible people that I cold called and who said yes was Shonda Smith Baker, who has been my partner and moderator on this endeavor. And she is just incredible. Quite honestly, I called her up. We talked about menopause for 20 minutes. And then I said, would you consider moderating my series? And she said yes. And it was a game changer. She's just incredible and can really weave the stories together in a way that I think I've never met has been able to do.
That's fantastic. Okay. Talk a little bit about what your past panels have been about.
We launched the series talking about health disparities for women, particularly women of color. And that really kicked it off with a bang because it really exposed the systemic issues in our health system that we probably all know about. But it's one thing to kind of know about it. It's another thing to see an expert on a stage, particularly a woman of color, talking about it and saying, no, you're not crazy. The systems are really set up to serve one group of people. So regardless of who your doctor is or what system you're in, there's a marginalization for women. And to hear that out loud in a group of women, it just kind of lit the place on fire. And so that's when I knew I was onto something. And then we followed that up with heart health, talking about heart disease for women. It's the number one killer of women. And my husband's got a cardiologist, I don't. And really talking about how it's different for women. Our hormones affect our heart, and they haven't really been studied in heart disease the way that they should be. So that was the second one. We moved into integrative healing. Women heal differently than men. We want mental, emotional, spiritual, cultural care. That one was really incredible. And then the final one for series one was aging. We talked about joyful aging, if there could be such a thing, hormones and menopause and caring for others. And then that led into series two, where we really focused on the caregiving aspect that women carry when it comes to healthcare and ourselves, our children, our parents, our friends, and our relatives.
So I have a question, because you said this all kind of started during the pandemic. Was your first series that you went for all virtual, or were you an in-person where you weren't really doing in-person back then?
Actually, it just started a year ago. So it was as we pulled out of the pandemic and we were starting to get together in person again. So about a year ago, a little more than a year ago is when we launched it. So it's always been in person. There hasn't been a virtual component to it, although we've videoed it all. And so I do want to get it out there at some point so other people can experience it. But we started in person. And the timing was perfect because people were really hungry to get together and hear from other women and just be together.
It's interesting. Some of the things that you talk about in healthcare, Lisa just talks about in general as women: educate, inspire, and connect, right? That's really what you're trying to do. But also you found that when women get together and the stories people are so happy to hear, they're going through similar things. Like, they're not alone. And that's what you say all the time.
I say it all the time
about women. We're all different and unique, and we want to be known as different and unique. We sit here, three very different people, but we have so many core things that align, and that's what bonds us.
Yeah, and that's been very much an important part of it, particularly the last one when we were talking about caregiving. Somebody shared that they had been caring for a premature child for a couple of years in and out of the ICU and the NICU, and didn't really consider it to be caregiving. It was just a thing, so we carry all of these burdens and we don't share them. And then we think everybody else is just moving along life, easily. And when we share and we realize that we're all carrying these burdens, it makes it a lot easier for all of us, I think.
Is it societal that has taught us that we're almost having to kind of rethink how we approach all these things to be able to ask for help, be able to see that our women friends are our greatest asset. That hasn't always been the way. We're seeing the shift, which is great, but I'm wondering, is it because so few opportunities were there for women in a man's world, so to speak, that there was more competition than there was collegiality?
Yeah, I think that's very true. And I think, again, COVID demonstrated to all women that we took the brunt of it on so many fronts. And so my background being in technology, if there was another woman in the room, you kind of would pace her out. She would be your competition. So women have kind of been socialized to compete with each other, whereas the same isn't necessarily true for groups of men. So women tend to mentor men and men tend to mentor men. So I think as we've kind of all had this big shift in our thinking, we realized that we can work with other women and help other women. We don't necessarily have to compete. And I mean, of course, we're all competitive human beings, but to help each other and support each other and, lend a helping hand is something that I feel is stronger post-pandemic than it necessarily was before.
I also think from my experience of helping women for over 39 years, if you take the work piece out of it and you just talk about being a woman and what it is to be a woman all day and just be you, I think women are more apt to talk to each other about that, because I think everyone kind of hides behind themselves until they can get in front of a group of women and someone just splurts something out, and then everyone gets comfortable. So when you say that competitive piece, if you remove the work piece out of it, I see a lot of that happening. So for myself, when I'm with a client or I meet a client for the first time, and I always say in the old days, we got in the dressing room, but now I'm at their house or virtually or whatever, and they are in their bra and underwear, I get to really meet who they are. All the walls are down. And that's when I learn the most information about what they really need from me. And I think when you form these groups and these series, when you break those walls down, women get to really feel who they are, who they want to be, who they're going to be, or what they're needing. And I think that's really important.
That's absolutely true. And that's really what I was referring to when I talk about like the magic of the room and the electricity that's in the room, because we're all there together. And, in the past, we would go to work, we'd get dressed, go to work, you have this veneer, and then welcome to the Zoom world where we're in each other's living rooms or closets, or kids are running into the shots on CNN even. And I think it really humanized all of us a little bit more. And I think that power of humanizing each other and seeing each other and as sisters and friends and partners is one of the greatest things that I kind of uncovered as I was doing this series. It's really powerful. And the connections are very strong after people leave that room. They want to continue talking to the people that they might have just met.
That's wonderful. I mean, a funny story is, you start about menopause, right? And if I meet someone for the first time, or I've been helping someone for many, many years, and I kind of know what their age is, and they start talking to me about things, and I said, hey, listen, I think you're starting menopause or you're going through menopause. And my standing joke to everyone is, if you hate your dog and your kids, you're going through menopause. And they just kind of startle and they look at me and they're like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. I said, so recognize that you are starting to go through menopause. This is what's happening, and go get help for that. Talk to people, do something about it. So that whole menopause thing is really important, especially when you have a bunch of women in the room who are either going through menopause, been through menopause. I mean, that's a big part of their life. And a lot of these women are starting to be empty nesters, and they need to find new roles, new purposes.
And a lot of these women have doctors who are retiring. And so now
I just had that yesterday. I got the letter in the mail that my internist, who I've had for years, is retiring. And so you have this like sheer panic for a second, and then like, oh my God, now what am I going to do? So all of these things start happening, and then you have work, right? So women take on a lot.
I think too, what you're talking about, and that all falls right in line with what you're doing, is creating the dialogues and the discussions and the information to be able to talk about what truly makes women unique and why it's so important to have services available that speak to actual needs. We've talked about this before. How many hormones are there in the human body?
Do you know the answer?
I don't. There's over 100. I know that. And yet, what do we study? What do we know about? So few. Like, they're all there for a reason. So what are they doing? What you talk about vitamin protocols. How do you figure out to the average Joe on the street or the average Jane on the street what vitamins you actually need without going through massive amounts of testing and big bucks to figure this all out? Should it be that difficult to know that our standard medical practice will test for now vitamin D because that's right, or vitamin C, or they'll hit the mains, but there's so many other vitamins that you could be deficient in. Are we really getting to the essence of what's needed for each individual person? I have way more questions than I have any kind of answers. So what you're doing, I'm saying, is so timely and so exceptional. And now it comes back to those who are attending taking the time to realize that this is such a need for them.
Yeah, it's been really great. And the more I learn that I don't know, and the more I learn that we don't know in general. And there's a couple of stats I often say that people don't know, and that's that prior to 1993, the NIH, which is the National Institutes of Health, didn't really study women because of, a variety of issues, but it had to be legislated in 1993. I was already out of college. So that basically means all of the medicines and drugs and everything that I took up to that point were never tested on women's bodies, or very infrequently. So what that means is that we don't really know what role estrogen plays on our heart, or we don't have like any of those long-term studies about women's bodies or menopause or how it changes us. And should we take hormones? Should we not take hormones? It's all so complicated, and it's just really been under-researched and understudied, and there's gaps like at every turn in women's health. And the more you learn that you don't know. And you say like the average Jane on the street might not know she should take vitamin D, but there are PhD, MD, MPH people at the university that are struggling to figure out what to do. So it's really a broad issue that a lot of people are bringing to light. So in particular, legislation is finally going through about menopause research. And interestingly, there's a nonprofit group called Let's Talk Menopause that is trying to push this through. So I'm headed to Chicago this weekend to meet with them and see how we can support their efforts. There's, Oprah's doing great work in this space, and Mika Brzezinski and Maria Shriver, and President Biden has the women's with Dr. Jill Biden. There's a lot of powerful women that are turned on to this right now. So the timing is, it's nationwide. A lot of people are looking at these issues.
But these women themselves have either gone through menopause or going through menopause, and they're saying, whoa, look is what happened to me, and I need to help some other women. I mean, until you start going through that process, you really don't understand it.
You really don't. And I think that's true for us through every stage of life, whether it's like when you're a teenage girl, and whether you're a new mom, if you have children. Nobody really tells you what to expect when you're pregnant, unless you buy the big thick book, and then you still don't really know, unless you have other women that have gone through it that'll share with you. And we're not really socialized necessarily to always talk about this stuff. And finally, people are talking about it. I think it's fantastic.
And speaking of that, I remember when I had my daughter, my oldest, and I had some issues after I gave birth and when I came home. And I was so angry that nobody told me about what happens when you come home. It's not like you have a baby and you're fine. No, you're not
They
fine.
hand you this baby
Yeah.
and you're like,
Well, no, like I had a lot of medical stuff going
Okay.
on. And, back then my daughter's gonna be 34 and I had I know it was postpartum now, but and I would call a few of my friends that were older than me and I'd go, excuse me, did you not tell me blah, 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 blah? And they're like, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. And
That's true, because you do forget a lot of the
so
things
now
that we
I'm
go through.
telling
Yes.
all the young
Yes.
girls and my own
Yes.
daughter who's had children and is going to have another baby soon, like, yep, this stuff's going to happen to you. And
Right.
it's okay. Like, it's going to hurt. It's going to be uncomfortable. You might be sad. You might be all of these things. And guess what? It's okay. You will get through it, but it's there.
And there are no resources, some resources. But I think to your point too, Katie, and to what all these other women are doing, is they're trying to move the needle so that this becomes common knowledge.
Exactly.
For those who are younger. Because really, even some of the health problems that I've had over the years, and really 2009 to 2018 was that 9 years of undiagnosed and improperly diagnosed stuff that finally resolved because of a car accident of all things. And going through that, all I kept thinking about is if I can just help so that nobody else has to go through this, so nobody else needs to go through what I just went through. And I think that's the core of women that we know and women that we've met along the way, is that need to really help someone else. And maybe there's a little bit of helping our younger selves in there if we'd have only known this.
Yeah, true. Very true, Katie. Very true.
Yeah, that is for sure. And likewise, I realized I probably had postpartum depression with at least two of my children, and nobody talked about it. And the most dangerous time actually for a woman, especially a woman of color, is 3 months to 6 months after giving birth. And there's amazing work being done in this area, but it's still not really talked about. There's another bill going through Congress, the Omnibus bill, that's trying to protect women after they have the baby. It's like everybody cares before the baby is born, but after the baby is born, mom still has a lot of health issues that she needs to attend to. And of course, we're all driven to care for the children that we just, that we're caring for, but we need to care for ourselves too. And that was a huge takeaway for me when I started learning more about this. I want to help my younger self so that other women don't have to go through that, because it was really, really hard. But we didn't talk about it. We just did it, right? Like women, we just keep on keeping on. So yeah, I think that's a huge part of it for me. The maternal health piece is something that does actually tie back to, of course, the menopause piece. It's just another phase in our lives that we haven't really talked about.
I mean, we are tasked, if we so choose, with bringing life into the world. You think about that in what it must do to a body and all the changes that you go through and the imperceptible changes that are there. And you're right, it's not been talked about. And aren't you great? You're back to work faster, or what? I just think back, and I think back if we could talk to our mothers to say, if you could have just shared more of this with me, or the vulnerability of it, would that have helped us along the way? So again, I think our mission is to definitely be out there talking about this and to do the things that you're doing and to share that as women, we all have commonalities and don't we all want to age wonderfully, right? We want to age with joy. And in order to do that, we have to understand more of what's going on in our bodies and our minds and how it's attached. Our daughter 6 months ago had a baby, and she got a facial the other day. And the facialist said, your skin is beautiful. Your hormones are all out of whack because you just had a baby. And all of that it was like reading the tea leaves, reading her skin and what was going on there. And my daughter said, wow, That's true. That's absolutely true. So you start talking about the components and how it all fits together and the body mind. And that's the direction I want to see our healthcare go. And that's the concern that I have with how long it's going to take to get there. Because now on the other side of it, you talk big pharmaceuticals and who's controlling the money and who's controlling the research and who's controlling all of that. So I want to take a quick break. I want to come back and talk about that a little bit. And then I want to get into getting to know you a little bit, Katie. Like, what's your routine look like in self-care, and what brings you pride, and are you organized, and all of those things? So we'll be right back. Lisa, you've been working with Mira Couture for quite some time now. What sets them apart in what they do?
They have a complete understanding of the customer, and their goal is to make sure that they're the best version of themselves when they walk out. And the category of bridal and mother of the bride, mother of the groom, and also custom clothing, it's such a tough place to be, and they nail it time and time again because they listen.
When people experience Mira Couture from a custom clothing perspective, what do you find people most surprised about?
That when they put their clothes on, they fit perfectly because they were fit for their body, and they can move, they can travel, they can sit, and they're comfortable the entire time they're wearing their pieces.
Are they surprised about the value?
They are once they receive the pieces and they wear them. Once they get one piece, they get that it was worth the value.
So you might spend a little bit more, but not as much as you would think, right?
Exactly. And the one thing I tell mother of the brides and mother of the grooms is if we have a dress that we're going to make long and you want to be able to cut it off and wear it to other people's weddings as a cocktail dress, all you're paying for then is an alteration to hem it up. So it's like 2 dresses in one. And you can wear that cocktail dress for 2, 3, 4 different weddings if it's different people. So break that down. But it is so well worth it. It is a magical place. I have been working with them for over 8 years, and I've never been disappointed.
Experience the magic. Go to miracouture.com. So as usual, when we take these little breaks, we probably should just keep recording because that's half the conversations that happen. But one thing you mentioned, Katie, and I really want to dial in on this. You said 80% of all the decisions, I would think that would the buying decisions, right, are female led.
Yeah. Women make 80% of the healthcare decisions for their families, but yet they're most often the one in the family that goes without healthcare. So again, caring for everybody else, making the choices, the decisions, and then putting yourself last in line for healthcare and taking care of yourself.
Is part of that because we think we're that strong that we can? I mean, what is the real reason for that?
Well, if you figure that out, you're going to solve all the problems of the universe, because that's just the female mind. And part of it, I think, is societal, is that we're taught that we need to care for other people. And part of it is that, maybe it's the hormones and the Pitocin or something that makes us care more. And then we just all think we're super women and, we'll be fine. Other things just seem to come first. So if you figure that out, let me know.
Okay, happy to. And I would be happy to figure it out too. I brought the financial decisions in there because I think that too is the same. I think it's a very high percentage of financial decisions. Who's buying, who's doing most of the buying, which has probably changed over the years, but is still very highly female driven. I talk to builders all day long and they're like, yeah, ultimately it's the woman you have to sell on buying a new home or doing
I think it's like 90%. 90% of home choices are made by women.
Right. So why then are more things not geared towards women? That's the thing that's so interesting to me. Is it because companies are still predominantly being led by men?
Yes.
That was a softball.
Yeah, they control the money and control the companies and control the focus. And, obviously this has changed through time, but through COVID, it actually got worse. So 98% of venture funding for new innovation goes to male-run organizations. Only 2% of it goes to female or founders of color. So that's the crux of it right there. We're just not innovating and bringing out new products that are led by the people that use them, women. And the same is true for research. The research is still geared towards men.
Yeah.
Drives me crazy.
It is, you sit here and you think, okay, how do you get that to change? And wouldn't you think there's got to be men out there? I know there's men out there who are smart enough to realize what's going on and start directing the companies towards looking at the greater good of the female population. It's good business sense.
It does. It's $1 trillion opportunity closing the healthcare gap, according to McKinsey report that came out this year. It's $1 trillion opportunity. And when you start saying the $1 trillion number, then people start paying attention. And there's a lot of fantastic work by both men and women in this space, but it's a very slow turn.
Yes. And let's be clear. I don't think any of us are anti-men.
No.
And I think there is just so much that has been overlooked and tamped down over the years that the time has come. It's happening in women's sports. It's happening in women's health. It's a revolution.
Well, but also, to be fair, this is how men were trained and socialized. It's not, I mean, it would be interesting to know how many men who are in the working world had a woman a mother who was out working versus the father, and how they feel about things. It's generational. And so I think they go and they learn and they work, but that isn't in their head. Like, it's not like, I need to be in touch with a woman. I think that she'll make a better decision about this. Like, they aren't.
But shouldn't it be now? I mean, we've had now, I'm 60 some years old and I've been working with men my entire adult life.
I think that it's going to maybe make some transitional changes in the next 10 to 30 years, because our children who are having sons are going to make a difference in that.
Well, I hope so. I hope it doesn't wait another 10 to 30 years. I mean, I really do think things are shifting.
I agree with you, but
now.
It has to be worldwide. It can't just, think about cultures and countries and without getting political, think about that.
So true. Well, when you have people like Katie starting at the level that she's starting at, right? It's more people like Katie.
Absolutely.
Who are doing this kind of good at the local level and then hopefully taking it nationally. And I would think that there would be companies out there who would want to partner with you to say, hey, we're here, we're paying attention. So finding you those companies is what's important.
Yeah, just raising awareness. That's where it all starts. It's like people just don't know. And if you don't know, you don't know. And the more you know, the more you know. So it's just getting the word out there, elevating the people that are doing the great work, will drive funding towards the work that they're doing, which will raise awareness about the lack of funding, which will raise awareness about the systems and how they're set up. And so it's just, you got to start somewhere. So start where you can start and go from there. It's better than not starting at all.
So, Katie, when you're not doing this and you're not managing a busy household, what brings you joy? What do you like to do? And what does self-care look like for you?
Well, sometimes I'm really not that great at taking care of myself, but through this process, I'm learning to do more on that front. I really like to go running, actually. I think it's really good for my mental health and my physical health. And I like to be alone. Like, I'm out in public and doing all the extroverty things. And sometimes I just want to be quiet. And so that's one of the things that I do that I really enjoy. We have a cabin. I like to hang out with my kids, travel, all the things. And I need to learn how to adjust my routines to my new stage in life.
So
So that's on my list.
what's your morning routine look like?
Well, I don't really have like a very set routine. Coffee for sure. If I can, I like to get out and walk with my neighborhood friends. I think that my morning routine has adjusted post-pandemic. Especially with what I wear on the bottom half of my body.
Or not wear anything at all.
Yeah.
That you never know, my morning routine has changed. It's really different post COVID, but it is nice to spend a few minutes just to care for yourself and do the hairs and the makeup and all that kind of stuff. But coffee for sure.
Are you an organized person?
I am not. I am really good at setting up systems, and I get things like super tidy and perfectly organized in my closet. And then like 2 days later, it's a total mess again. So
we can work
I
on
love it. Love it when things are all tidy and neat and in a box. But when you live in a household of 6 people, sometimes you just got to let that go. Otherwise, you'll go crazy.
Are all your children still at home?
No, I have 2 at home and 2 in college. So, but until last year, just this last fall, I had all 4 at home.
That's a transition right there. So no wonder why your routines are changing. And I think for women, particularly going back to being the caregivers, I think the routines are very static. There's not static. What's the opposite of static? They're very mobile routines based on what's going on in your house and all the other things that you've got going on.
Just deciding food.
Yeah.
I mean, 6 people and everyone that wants to eat different things, and they're all hungry because they're all growing. And, that was always a challenge for me.
Yeah. And the cooking during the pandemic, when we were all locked in, 3 teenage boys and however many meals every single day. I think Nico's Tacos came out with like a family tray of enchiladas that you could drive up and pick up. And that was saved my life, literally, because we couldn't order in from restaurants for quite some time. And I would just pick up that tray of enchiladas and put it on the counter. And it just felt like the biggest present to myself that I could have ever found.
That's fantastic. Note to our social media person, tag Nico's Tacos.
That's right.
Yeah.
Shout out for sure. They're great.
Shout out for sure. Well, a couple more questions, and then we're going to talk about your nonprofit that you want to highlight.
So, Katie, what do you think your superpower is?
I can always get a front row parking spot, even at Target on Christmas.
Oh, wow.
It's parking karma, and nobody really believes it until they go someplace with me on the busiest shopping day of the year, or it's just, I don't know. I have very good.
If I want to go to a big event or a concert, I should go with you.
I don't know. I used to think it was a fluke, but yep, that's my superpower. It's it's not great, but it's very handy sometimes.
That is a really good superpower.
I love it. I love it. If you were not working in technology or doing what you're doing now, what's your secret job that you would have? What do you think you'd be doing?
Well, I think I'm kind of doing exactly what I want, which is really amazing. I really leaning into your passion project and finding your purpose is something that women kind of look for often after their kids are starting to grow or get out of the house, and I feel like I'm kind of right in that spot. So I'm super happy about that. It's all the things again, meeting new people, traveling the world, all those things are really enticing to me, but doing what I'm doing right now is what I want to be doing.
That's fantastic. I love that. And aging joyfully.
Is there such a thing, right? Yeah, I've had good health, and I hope I can hold on to that for as long as possible. when you're not feeling well, nothing else really matters.
Absolutely. You're absolutely
That
right
is
about that.
so true. That is so true. And bringing it back to what you're talking about is finding the avenues to be able to talk about that and share that, and then find help for that. It comes back to that, doesn't it? Because if you are not feeling good, nothing else matters.
Yeah, and that's also a big part of caregiving and caring for older parents in particular. If they're not feeling well, you're not feeling well, we got to talk about it. We have to support each other because it's just such a huge role, and it's taxing. It really takes away from our own health, and that doesn't help anybody.
No, going through that, and I have lost both of my parents, and I will say that is probably one of the most taxing times in anyone's life. And you never know if it's going to be a long process, if your parents are going to age gracefully, if they're going to age with joy, if they're going to have significant illnesses that cause things to be different. In my case, one was a cancer diagnosis, and the other was really COPD, emphysema, and a lifetime of smoking. And you navigate the best you can, but boy, it would be lovely to hear from others who have gone through that, to be able to say you're not alone, and to be able to share that in safe spaces. I think that's really important.
There's a lot of good work happening in that space as well. People that are, you might be familiar with like a birth doula, which is somebody that helps women through birth. There's also death doulas that help you guide a parent or other loved one through end of life. Kathy Wurzer's got End in Mind Project, which is really talking about living fully until the end and understanding, we're all going to die, right? So how come we don't talk about it? So getting that word out has been something she's been focused on. It's been really great. So yeah, that's a big area that we need to elevate more, talk about more, and help each other more, I think.
Yeah, and that falls into the whole healthcare too, because, I remember kind of getting to the final decisions with my mom on, is it time to go into hospice or is it not time to go into hospice? And my very good friend, who is my internal medicine doctor and my concierge doctor now at this point, was the one to say, look, you're not going to find a cure for what she's got. So this isn't about running to the hospital when things get bad. This is about making the decisions that give her the best quality of life for long term, because running to the hospital, she was, lots of steroids and a scolding from the nurse telling her never to smoke again. And, things like that just didn't make sense at the time. And so you had to almost be hit in the face with it. Like, well, that makes sense. We aren't talking about, she's not going to be cured from COPD and emphysema. And it's really a tipping point. So understanding that made us understand the process a little better. And the whole idea of death doula makes so much sense. It really does. Hospice is amazing, and what it does for the family is incredible. And I know people that have had awful hospice experiences, but I think for the most part, what hospice does, and that's changed so much over the years too, right? It used to be you could only be in hospice 6 months, and now you can be out of hospice if you get better. So understanding it, it's really all just about the understanding, and you don't know until you know.
Yeah. And it's also about the system, about how the system is set up and how hospice is, how it's paid for through insurance or other mechanisms. And all of those need to be there's a lot of groups that are doing really good work in that space as well.
And that's a whole nother discussion for another day, is how we actually pay for healthcare and what is actually being serviced, and big pharma and all of those things. Well, that's like we'll leave the dangling participle of the conversation. Tell us tell us some events that are coming up and how one should find you and find these events.
Yeah, thanks. So the next one, we're taking a little bit of a shift for our summer panel, which is July 18th. We are going to talk about innovations in women's health. So we're going to start highlighting the companies that are doing really great work to innovate and come up with new ideas and new products, new care delivery models, how healthcare is delivered to women. That's July 18th. It's at the Minneapolis Club at 8 in the morning. You can find me on my website. It's letstalkhealthwomen.com. And we have Eventbrite and all the things, but the website is the easiest place to find out about our future events. October, we'll be talking about trauma and how it lives in the body and affects our health long-term. And then in January, we're going to get into the world of AI and understanding how it's going to change how women's health, how we take care of our own health, and what's going to happen in the future. That's a very hot spot right now for a lot of companies.
Those all sound fantastic.
Well, I will be at July 18th for sure. And we'll see I don't know that I can commit to anything in October at this point. That's a long way off. I will do my best.
The panels are booked to 2025, and just to say that out loud, because I usually don't know what I'm doing tomorrow. It's kind of demonstrates to me that that people really are looking forward to talking more about this stuff.
I think that's fantastic. Okay, few couple minutes left. Talk to us about the nonprofit that you want to touch on.
The way I got into the health space was when we adopted our daughter from Korea, actually 10 years ago, 12 years ago, my goodness, 13 years ago. And the Adoption Medicine Clinic is a pediatric clinic at the University of Minnesota that was founded 35 years ago as the International Adoption Clinic to help parents who had adopted internationally. And then through the years, it now works with primarily foster kids and kids who are adopted domestically because they have unique health challenges just based on that severing of the relationship with the birth mother that are mental, emotional, cultural. And so the Adoption Medicine Clinic just looks at the whole child and tries to help parents navigate that process. And there's a big symposium this summer at the University of Minnesota called ICAR 8, where they're having a discussion that brings forward adult adoptees to talk about their experience in their life. So that's going to be at the Northrop, and that's what I want to talk about on that front.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, the website for that is med.umn.edu/adoption. So if anyone
Correct.
wants more information on that, that is how you get to it. And Katie, we can't thank you enough. If people want to get a hold of you, they can get a hold of you through your website, which give it to us one more time.
It's letstalkhealthwomen.com.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you. This has been a lot of fun.
You're terrific. Well, Lisa, what we don't know, we don't know. And that's a lot of stuff.
It's a lot. It's a lot of stuff.
You know what that means?
What?
That means we will have stuff to talk about on the podcast for years to come.
That's true, Katie. You're
We'll have
right.
guests to seek out and fabulous people like Katie Severt.
It just
doing
opens
wonderful
up
things.
doors for things that we haven't thought about. We
Exactly.
have, but we haven't. You don't know what you don't
You
know.
don't know what you don't know.
Very good.
That statement, and then it is what it is, although I think that's less important than you don't know what you don't know. Because how can you change? It is what it is if you don't know.
True. Let's leave it at that.
Until next time, we are wishing you the best view in your mirror ever. We thank you for your support. You can find more of us on theviewinyourmirror.com. And let us know what you're thinking, what you want to hear, what you don't know that you'd like to know. Until next time.